I was just a tired single mom trying to make ends meet, working double shifts and surviving off coffee and prayer. Then one night, I found a stranger unconscious in the rain. I never imagined that saving him would change my life forever, or that I'd end up his wife. Before I take you into the wildest story of my life, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because these love stories, they're real, raw, and just like mine, they might change your heart too. Let's begin. Life wasn't easy for me back then. I was a single mom, just trying to survive one day at a time. Every morning felt like a battle. I had to fight for my little boy, Jeremiah. He was my world, my reason for getting out of bed when the weight of it all felt too heavy. I worked long hours at a small, greasy diner downtown, double shifts most days. The pay wasn't much, just enough to keep the lights on and a roof over our heads. Sometimes I'd come home so tired I wouldn't even remember driving. Rent was always late, the fridge was always half empty, and I'd often lie awake at night wondering if I was enough. Not for the world, but just for him. There were moments when I'd look in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. My hair always tied back in a messy puff, eyes tired, clothes smelling like bacon and coffee. Some nights I'd break down in the shower just so Jeremiah wouldn't hear me cry. The loneliness was a different kind of pain, not just being alone, but feeling invisible, like the world moved right past me and I was just background, forgotten. I saw other women post about love and happiness, about surprise flowers and weekend getaways, and I'd wonder, truly wonder, if love was only made for a certain kind of woman, a woman who wasn't me. I had accepted that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't meant for a fairy tale. Maybe my story was just meant to be one of survival. And that was okay. Or so I told myself, because deep down, I had this quiet ache, this whisper that said, there has to be more. But I didn't believe it, not yet. It was one of those nights where the sky just wouldn't stop crying. The rain poured like it was trying to wash the whole world clean. I had just finished a closing shift at the diner, feet aching, back sore, soaked from the knees down because my cheap umbrella had snapped in the wind. All I wanted was to get home, kick off my shoes, and wrap my arms around my son before he drifted off to sleep. But life had something else planned. I was cutting through a side street, the same one I always took to save time, when I saw him. At first, I thought it was just a pile of clothes left behind. But as I got closer, I realized, no, it was a man, lying there, completely still, soaked to the bone. My heart jumped. I didn't know if he was drunk, hurt, or worse. I remember my hands shaking as I leaned down and touched his shoulder. He didn't respond. Something in me just kicked in. I didn't think twice. I dialed 911, told them exactly where I was, and stayed right by his side. I pulled off my diner jacket and covered his chest, even though I was freezing. His face looked pale, like all the life had drained from him. I kept whispering, "Hey, stay with me. Help's coming. Don't leave." When the ambulance finally arrived, they said if I hadn't found him when I did, he probably wouldn't have made it. I had no idea who he was, just a stranger in the night. But something about him? I don't know. It felt like I was supposed to be there. Like maybe, for once, life had put me in the right place at the right time. The hospital was cold, sterile, and too bright. I remember sitting in that hard plastic chair in the ER waiting room, still dripping wet, my hands curled around a styrofoam cup of vending machine coffee. I wasn't family. I wasn't a friend. I didn't even know his name. But something about walking away didn't sit right with me. I needed to know if he was okay. A nurse eventually came out and told me he was stable. They said he had suffered a head injury and some bruised ribs, likely from being attacked. But the strangest part? He had no ID, no phone, nothing. It was like he'd been wiped clean. The only thing they found was a watch, broken, expensive looking, but no initials, no engraving. The police were called, but with no identification and no witnesses, there wasn't much they could do. I went home that night, soaked and exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. His face kept flashing in my mind. The way he looked so lost, so alone. The next afternoon, after dropping Jeremiah off at school, I found myself back at the hospital. I told the nurse I just wanted to check in. That's when she said, "He woke up this morning. He asked about the woman who stayed with him." When I walked into his room, he turned his head slowly. His eyes met mine, and something passed between us, something quiet but powerful. He gave me the faintest smile and said, "You're the angel, right?" I laughed nervously. Far from it. He didn't tell me who he was. Not that day. He just said thank you. Over and over again. And even though I still didn't know his name, I knew this wasn't the last time I'd see him. Over the next few days, I kept visiting him. I didn't plan to. It just happened. Something kept pulling me back to that hospital room. He still hadn't shared much about himself. No full name, no details, just a soft smile and quiet gratitude. But there was a calmness about him, a gentleness I wasn't used to. He'd watch me talk, really watch, like he was listening to more than just my words. I started bringing him little things, some homemade soup, crossword puzzles, even a pair of socks because his feet were always cold. He laughed at that one, said it was the kindest thing anyone had done for him in a long time. I'd sit by his bed and tell him about my son, about my life at the diner, about how I dreamed of going back to school someday. I didn't know why I was sharing so much. Maybe it was because he didn't look at me like I was broken or tired or used up. He just listened. And the more I sat there, the more I started to look forward to it. The way he smiled when I walked in. The way he'd ask about Jeremiah, like he genuinely cared. Sometimes he'd close his eyes while I talked, like my voice gave him peace. But even then, I could tell he was holding something back. There were moments he'd drift off in thought, eyes clouded, like he was remembering a life he didn't want to return to. I didn't push. I figured we were both carrying our own kind of pain. Still, I felt safe with him, seen. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't just a struggling waitress or a tired mom. I was just me. And he made that feel like enough. A week had passed since I found him, and by then, our conversations had turned into something easy, something comforting. I had started calling him Jay since he hadn't told me his name, and he didn't seem to mind. But everything changed the day I walked into his hospital room and found two men in suits standing by his bed. They didn't look like family or doctors. They looked important, serious. I hesitated at the door, but he waved me in. His voice was calm, but there was something different in his eyes. That softness was still there, but now there was weight behind it, like a part of him had returned. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly once the men stepped out. "My name is Jason Whitmore." The name didn't mean anything to me at first. I just nodded, thinking, okay, now I know. But when I got home later that day and looked him up, my jaw dropped. He wasn't just some man I found on the street. He was the Jason Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Technologies, a billionaire, all over the news just a few months ago for disappearing during a private wellness retreat. I stared at my phone in disbelief. The man I'd been bringing soup to, joking with, sitting beside while he healed, he was one of the richest men in the country, and he never once let on. No attitude, no arrogance, just Jay. When I saw him again, I asked why he didn't tell me. He said, Because for the first time in years, someone looked at me and didn't see money. You saw a man who needed help, and that meant more than you'll ever know. I didn't know it yet, but that moment changed everything. After the truth came out, everything felt surreal. I kept waiting for him to change, to suddenly act like he was better than me now that I knew who he really was. But he didn't. He was still the same man who laughed at my terrible diner stories and asked how Jeremiah was doing every morning. Still Jay, even if the world called him Mr. Whitmore. A few days after he was discharged, I was back at the diner wiping down counters, trying to ignore the ache in my feet, when a sleek black car pulled up outside. I didn't think much of it until the door opened and he stepped out, wearing a coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Heads turned. My manager's mouth literally dropped open. And there he was, standing at my station like it was the most normal thing in the world. "I owed you a proper thank you," he said, holding out a brown envelope. I frowned, hesitant. Inside was a letter offering me a fully paid apartment in a safe neighborhood and a trust fund set up for Jeremiah's education. I froze. My hands trembled as I pushed the envelope back toward him. "I didn't save you for this," I whispered. He nodded slowly. "I know. That's exactly why you deserve it." It took me days to accept even part of his offer. I wasn't used to people giving without wanting something back. But Jay? He never pushed, never made me feel small. When I finally said yes, he smiled and said, "Good, now I can sleep at night." He didn't save me with money. He saved me by making me feel like I mattered, like kindness hadn't gone unnoticed. And that meant everything. I never saw it coming, not really. At first, everything between us felt simple. Two people from completely different worlds, somehow finding comfort in each other. After he got out of the hospital, Jay kept showing up. Not in a grand, flashy way, just present. He'd swing by the diner when things were slow, sit at the counter, order the same terrible cup of coffee, and talk to me like there was nowhere else he'd rather be. He started picking Jeremiah up from school with me sometimes, and the way he was with my son, that's what did it. Jay didn't just bring him toys or say the right things. He listened. He showed up for parent-teacher conferences, helped with homework, and even taught Jeremiah how to tie a tie for his first school dance. I watched my little boy light up every time Jay was around, and slowly I started lighting up too. But I didn't want to admit it, not out loud. I kept telling myself we were just friends, just two people healing together, that he'd eventually go back to his world and I'd stay in mine. I couldn't let my heart hope for more. I was used to disappointment, used to loving people who left. Still, every time we laughed together, every time he looked at me like I was the only one in the room, a tiny voice inside whispered, "What if?" One night, after Jeremiah had gone to bed, Jay and I sat on my old, squeaky couch watching a movie neither of us was really paying attention to. I noticed how close he was sitting, how his hand brushed mine and didn't move away. There was this pause, a quiet, beautiful stillness, and then he looked at me and said, "You know, you don't have to do this alone anymore." My chest tightened. "Do what?" "This life. Carry it all by yourself." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. So he leaned in, slow and gentle, and kissed me like I was something precious, something worth waiting for. That night, something shifted. He didn't just make me feel seen anymore. He made me feel chosen. And for the first time in forever, I let myself believe in love again. I kept waiting for the moment to pass, for him to realize I wasn't the woman he was supposed to fall for. I wasn't polished or powerful. I didn't come from money or move through the world like someone who belonged in boardrooms or headlines. I was just me, a woman who worked hard, loved harder, and gave whatever she had to keep her child safe. But Jay? He never once made me feel like I needed to be more than that. We didn't rush into anything. After that first kiss, there was a softness between us, like we were both careful not to break something fragile. He never pressured me, never tried to sweep me away with grand gestures or big words. Instead, he showed up in the small ways that mattered most. He helped wash dishes, walked Jeremiah to the bus stop, sat with me on the porch when I was too tired to talk, letting silence be enough. One night, he invited me to a private dinner, just the two of us, in a quiet rooftop space he had renovated above one of his buildings. There were candles everywhere, soft music playing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt beautiful, not because of the dress or the lights, but because of the way he looked at me, like he already saw everything I tried to hide and still chose to stay. As the night ended, he reached across the table, took my hand, and said, "You saved my life, but you didn't just pull me off that street. You brought me back to something I forgot I needed: love, family, home." I felt the tears before I even realized they were there. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Are you sure? This, us? It doesn't make sense." And he smiled, the softest smile I'd ever seen, and said, "It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be real. And this, you and me, it's the realest thing I've ever known." In that moment, something inside me finally let go. The fear, the doubt, the belief that I wasn't worthy of something this deep. Because he saw me, and he chose me, just as I was. If you had told me a year earlier that I'd be standing in front of a crowd with a diamond on my finger and my heart full of joy, I would have laughed out loud. That kind of thing didn't happen to women like me. At least, that's what I used to believe. But Jay had a way of rewriting every story I ever told myself. And the proposal? It was something out of a dream. It happened at Jeremiah's school play. I know, that doesn't sound glamorous, but that's exactly why it was perfect. Jay knew how much I loved moments that were real, raw, unfiltered, full of heart. That night, Jeremiah had a small part as a narrator in the holiday play, and Jay was front row with me, cheering like he was watching a Broadway show. I thought that was the special moment, until it wasn't. After the final applause, the principal came on stage and said someone had a few words to say. Then Jay walked up, microphone in hand, and for a second, I was sure I was dreaming. He looked straight at me, smiled, and said, "There's someone in this room who changed my life forever. She saved me when I couldn't even speak for myself. She gave me love when I had nothing to give. And she gave me a family when I didn't even know I needed one." The whole room went quiet. Then he turned to Jeremiah, who was beaming with pride, and said, "But before I ask your mom something important, I need your permission." Jeremiah, without missing a beat, nodded and yelled, "Yes." And just like that, Jay got down on one knee, pulled out the ring, and asked me to marry him right there, in front of teachers, kids, parents, everyone. I said yes. Through tears, laughter, and disbelief, I said yes. Of course, the story went viral. News outlets picked it up. Single mom saves billionaire, ends up engaged. Some people judged. Some called it a fairy tale. But I didn't care, because I knew the truth. This wasn't about money or headlines. It was about love, the quiet, steady kind that shows up, stays, and builds something real. People see the ring now, the cars, the new house tucked in the hills, with a view that still takes my breath away every morning. They see the dresses I never dreamed of wearing, the interviews, the attention, and yeah, from the outside, it probably looks like a dream come true. But what they don't see, the part I hold closest to my heart, is that I'm still the same girl I was that rainy night, the same tired waitress, the same scared, hopeful single mom just trying to make it to the next day. Because that part of me, She's still in here, and honestly, I think she's the reason Jay fell in love with me in the first place. I didn't become someone new when I married him. If anything, I became more myself, and Jay never once asked me to change. He still listens to my long, rambling stories, still holds my hand when I'm nervous, still dances with Jeremiah in the kitchen after dinner like no one's watching. And even now, after everything, we still find joy in the small things: late night grocery runs, Sunday mornings in pajamas, laughing over burnt toast and spilled coffee. It's those little moments that mean the most. I use my time now to give back. I volunteer at the women's shelter I once walked past with my head down, embarrassed that I'd even considered asking for help. I sit with women who remind me of myself, women who've been overlooked, cast aside, or told they're too much or not enough. And I tell them what I had to learn the hard way. You are still worthy of love. You are still worthy of a full life. Jay always tells people that I saved him, but what most don't know is he saved me too, not with money, not with fairy tale promises, but with presence, with honesty, with love that never asked me to be anything more than exactly who I am. So, yes, I may be married to a billionaire now, but in all the ways that really matter, I'm still just a girl with a big heart, a brave son, and a story that proves love shows up exactly when you stop looking for it. If my story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes in kindness. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, love finds us in the most unexpected places. Yours might be just around the corner. Stay open. Love.